This year's Labor Day Classic will be a massive mix of football and music, presented by WeatherTech. It all starts with Born in the 80s jamming on the Stipley stage during pregame. Then Dwayne Gretzky will perform during halftime and provide an hour-long concert after the game. Plus, we're now offering the Labor Day Plus 2-pack. You can get tickets to the Labor Day Classic and any 2 games remaining on the schedule for one low price. Get your tickets now by going to ticats.ca/tickets or call 905-547-CATS.
From the Ticats Audio Network, this is a Ticats This Week, built by Turkstra. Whatever your next home project is, build it better with Turkstra. Visit TurkstraLumber.com today.
Big game coming up. It's the Labor Day Classic. It is one the Tiger Cats have to win, not only because it's the Argos at Tim Hortons Field on Monday, 2:30 kickoff, but they need wins to try to catch the Argos. Or maybe we're talking crossover. We'll get into all that. Mike Daly, Luke Tasker, I'm RJ Broadhead. Lots to discuss from this past week, guys. And Tiger Cats, just a tough loss. A 4-point lead with just over a minute and a half to go. The defense had been playing so well. Winnipeg had the ball on their 38. I was feeling pretty good for a win. I thought they were in good shape, and Winnipeg puts together an 11-play, 72-yard drive. They get a touchdown when they needed it against a defense who had one of its best games of the season. How did they do that against the Ticats defense when they needed it, Mike? They had to have a touchdown. Field goal wouldn't have done them any good.
Yeah, it's almost the history of Zach Collaros, it seemed like. It was one of those, oh no, did we give him too much time type of deal. And it's too bad, really, because like you said, the Ticats defense was playing very, very well throughout that game and was making opportune plays. I mean, getting a little bit of luck on their side as well with, the one I can think of is the Kyle Wilson interception, where it goes off the head of Jonathan Moss. Yeah, right? And it's just unfortunate because in a situation like that, they talk about, you can't be the team that shoots yourself in the foot or loses games. You got to find ways to win, and that was an opportunity. As well as that defense had played, that was the opportunity to finish off that. Unfortunately, the offense couldn't get a couple first downs, and I'm sure the offense is talking about that in the meeting room in order to really extend that clock. But at one point, you just need a player to make a play. And when it's an 11-play drive, there's plenty of opportunities for those players to make a play. And unfortunately, when it's that tight near the end, because of how the beginning of the game went, it's tough to lose those ones when they're that close. That one hurts more than just getting blown out. That's for sure.
How did you feel about it, Luke? Were you feeling? I was feeling confident when Winnipeg was starting inside their 40. I didn't think they were going to get a touchdown.
Yeah, all night we were watching the Ticat defense make plays when they had to. As that game started going, I was thinking, if it was a slow start offensively for the Ticats, but there wasn't glaring mistakes. Bo was protecting the football, and if they weren't moving it, they were at least giving themselves a chance to punt it away. And the Ticat defense was playing really well right from the start. And as Winnipeg started to turn the ball over, that second half started, and it looked to me like the Ticats were going to pull ahead with a big lead. And even in spite of the glaring mistake in that game, which was the dropped punt return for a Winnipeg touchdown, that alone is very hard to outplay. I mean, you're giving a free score to your opponent, but they did hang in there. And like Mike said, you didn't do enough to capture a large lead, even though at times it looked like the Ticats in that second half were playing that much better than Winnipeg, that it could have been a 2-score game, but it never got to that point. A missed field goal and then a touchdown for your opponent on special teams, and that's going to require you to dig your heels in on that last drive. And I think I agree with Mike. I mean, Zach is he's just one of the guys who can do that, and he didn't play a great game. He wasn't one of his best performances by any means. But then when it counted at the end, and when it's sitting right in front of him, he's able to put it together. That drive included a third down attempt where they had to move the chains, and they did it. And tough, really tough, man. Like that win more than any of the ones that we've called, RJ, just really makes you hang your head at the end of the game and think, man, I'm not sure what else to do. They go out to Winnipeg and put together what seemed like a decent game and couldn't finish it off.
Yeah, and that's what MOPs do. They maybe don't have their best game, but when the game's on the line, they find a way to get it done, and Winnipeg gets the victory. As players, how did you react to losses like that? Mike, let's start with you.
Yeah, it wasn't easy because when it's that close of a game, you're always looking, okay, how could we have gotten 7 more points, 8 more points, whatever it is? So
you replay the game a little bit in your head.
Yeah, but now every little micro play matters that much more. When it's a game that you lose by, 2 or 3 touchdowns, okay, a lot went wrong. It's not all on one thing. But now when, like, for instance, Bird, like, that punt return fumble, he's going to sit there and eat himself alive because that was the differentiator of the game, right? The Mark Leggio missed kick. Like, each of these players are going to look at certain plays that they had, whether they had 1, 2, 3 plays that could have switched the game, and they're going to say, that's the play right there. And it's really unfortunate when losses like that happen because, the Ticats were playing well. We all said it after the post game. We're like, well, this felt different. It felt really different, and the Ticats were putting together a good second half, and we're like, holy cow, this is really working out. We're getting a big punt return. Unfortunately, with the penalty, the offense was starting to move the ball. The defense was still playing well. And, yeah, when you lose those ones, especially the situation the Ticats are in right now, you just, you start pulling your hair out at the frustration that's happening on the field.
Did you dwell on those losses, Luke, or did you just put it behind you and look ahead to the next one?
Yeah, it's tough. And I will say the players have the most control, and they can go back to work, where everyone else, all of us watching, like, you just have to wallow in your own misery until they can win a
Media's
football
hard,
game.
isn't it?
Yes.
Media and being a fan's hard.
I know. The players, they can get back to work, so that's a good thing. But I will say, I think back to 2017, which unfortunately this season's reminded me a lot of 2017, and when I think the last loss of to go 0-8, Mike, was when we were in Edmonton, and June Jones was actually there, and he was going to become a part of the team the following week. He was in Edmonton, and that game actually, it was Zach was obviously playing for us, and I remember he and I just didn't connect on a little 5-yard out route and up in the end zone. It kind of got covered down, and I kind of got covered, and then there was somebody over the top. The whole thing was dead from the start, and we lost the game. But it was like maybe a glimpse of like, oh, are we about to do this kind of and break this losing streak? And then it didn't happen. And then we ended up, it was a close game, but we lost anyways. And so once again, having to go back home from the West and still dwelling on that fixing the problems and trying to win games. So really hard. I mean, it does stick with you. And like Mike said, when the game comes down to such a tight margin, a lot of guys have one little thing they could have done wrong, could have done differently to change that. Even if you're a defensive player who played a pretty good game, but maybe you missed a chance to stop a drive on second down, kind of missed a tackle, and the drive continued into points. You're thinking about that one play, even though us three sitting here talking aren't. That's not the problem. We're talking about the dropped punt return for a Winnipeg touchdown. We're talking about that last drive by Caleros. All those guys in the locker room. I should say all, but a lot of the difference makers are thinking about something that they could have done to have won the game, and it's unfortunate.
Well, and Luke, it's, we talked about it after the game too, where there's certain years, and you talked about 2017, and then now I'm going to go to 2019, where you find ways to lose a bunch of games, but then in 2019 we found ways to win games, right? And that's when we had a bunch of wins, and it's really hard to put your finger on how you end up doing that, right? It almost seems like in 2019 we could play the worst games, and when you watch it on film, you're like, what are we doing? But we still won the game. But then in 2017, and it feels a little bit like this year's Ticats, they can put together a lot of good plays, a lot of good things, and it's like, hey, we're still not getting the W. And it's really hard to put your finger on what that reason is, but it's just good teams find ways to win those tight ones, and unfortunately it just didn't go that way.
2019, you guys were teammates. Head coach was Orlando Steinauer. Did you ever hear Coach O say, you don't lose, you learn?
Yes, Coach O. That was one of many Coach O isms and Mike, to your point too, like, I mean, some of it's just when you're in the habit of losing, like it's like a microchip. The little will just put you back to into your rhythm of losing. And the inverse was true for us in 2019, but it takes almost perfection, it feels like right now, for the Ticats to get a win.
Yeah, they could easily have 5 wins. I went back and looked. They've led after the third quarter 5 times this year. So heading into the fourth quarter, they've had a lead. They've won 2 of those games, lost 3 of those. And here we are getting ready for game 12 of the season. So let's reflect a little bit. Back to game 2 against Saskatchewan. They were up by 7 points with 44 seconds to go, and the Riders ended up scoring 10 points in the final 43 seconds to get the walk-off Brett Lowther field goal win. And that was Tim White had a ball go off his shoulder pad, and it ended up pretty good field position for the Riders, so bad luck. The Ottawa game, again, they had a lead, 28 seconds to go. They were up by a point, and they tried the squib kick. And it didn't really work, and Ottawa ended up with good field position, and they get the walk-off field goal there. So really, the Tiger Cats, with 5 wins, be a lot different feel. How can they close out games? They've had trouble with it. They haven't won a fourth quarter in 8 straight games, so somehow they have to figure out how to finish these games, Mike. How do you do it with a team that's trying to learn to win, it appears?
Yeah, that's hey, RJ, you'd make a lot of money if you could figure out the answer to that question. But
I'm going to study it. I need money.
But it's one of the. It goes right back to what Luke and I were just saying. It's if you can't put your thumb on it, but a couple of those games that you mentioned at the beginning, Saskatchewan, Ottawa, those go the Ticat way if it's just luck is on your side. And you said you got to be good to be lucky, got to be lucky to be good, and that's the situation that they're in. And I know at the time we were like, well, look at all the good things that the Ticats are able to do. They just managed to lose those games in the Saskatchewan and the Ottawa, as you mentioned. And then it just never really built or grew from there. And yeah, the Winnipeg game was the first one where we're like, okay, there's some life back in the Ticats here, especially coming out of that halftime. And I don't know, that fourth quarter, it's a weird one because it's not like anything special happens going into the fourth quarter. You've now seen the team for 3 quarters. You have an understanding of what they're trying to do, the players, and how they're running routes, or if it's on defense or if it's on offense, how the structure of their coverages are looking or who you're going up against. But it's not like there's anything special that each team does in the fourth quarter. You just need to continue to execute on that elite level. Just like Luke said, on that out and up. It just wasn't there. And so unfortunately, that's the world that the Ticats are in right now, is the execution is like a roller coaster right now, where when it's down bad, right? And what was it, 3 first downs in the first half of Winnipeg? And then when it's up, it looks really good. And you're like, wow, like the Saskatchewan and Ottawa game on offense. You're like, okay, this is a really good Ticats offense. And it's just, a roller coaster of emotions, to keep with the analogy.
Yeah, I think back to the 2 wins, which were consecutive wins for the Ticats. Toronto and Edmonton. And what I remember specifically is just, it's unfortunate because we're not coming out of a bad quarterback play in Winnipeg, but both threw for 5 touchdowns in Edmonton, and they were moving the ball against Toronto. And is that what it takes for this Ticat team? Do you just have to have not just ball security from the quarterback? Because that's what I was happy with in Winnipeg. I mean, the Ticat offense was protecting the football, even when they weren't able to move it effectively in that first quarter. They were protecting the football and giving themselves a chance. Well, maybe this Ticat team just needs, outstanding, exceptional quarterback play to get a win, and that just may be the reality of what it's going to take this year.
Or more block punts.
Good point.
Good point. Good point. When Dennis McKnight came in, and there was back-to-back block punts in games. I mean, that's an incredible stat, and it changes everything. Just like this fumbled punt return in Winnipeg, just absolutely bust the game wide open.
Okay, so we've got. Let's talk about that right now with Jordan Bird. Probably a lot of emotions. His first touch as a Tiger Cat, and it winds up being a fumble. Winnipeg gets a touchdown out of it. They win the game. Did you see enough of him after that in the game, Mike, to feel good about having Jordan Bird as the returner and maybe a big playmaker in the future?
Well, he did hit that one big return that unfortunately got called back, right? And that would have been a momentum flipper at that point. But he hit it pretty good. And he showed with the little scooting along, as I call it, because he's a short guy. It looks like his legs are just moving twice as fast as his body. But he was hitting those holes pretty good. And the unfortunate thing, and I actually go back to what Luke said a long time ago, where the hardest thing about getting from practice to a game, where Jordan Bird was playing the majority of, he was on practice roster, you don't get the tackling feel, you don't get the hitting feel. And the first thing that goes, Luke talked about, was the ball security. And there's just certain times where, as a ball carrier, whether you're a receiver, running back, returner, you have to know when the play's dead. And there's no extra efforts now because you're putting the ball at risk. And watching that return, that's exactly what it was. He ended up trying to bust it to the field, and it was just Winnipeg players everywhere, right? And at that point, I know as a returner you want to make some big plays, but put the ball at risk when you do that. And, we look at the difference between a Shamar Bridges and a Tim White. It seems like every time Tim White catches the ball, he's bouncing around and trying to make a big play happen. Well, Shamar Bridges catches that ball and falls forward. And that was the situation that I think Bird needed to do on that one, but that's a learning experience for him. And he's first game in there trying to figure it out and get hit like that. But I think I saw enough. I think I saw enough for him to hit that big return. They need that, and they weren't getting that before. And that was the first one where you're like, okay, here we go. We got a little bit of a return game. So I think you give him another shot, but it's one of those tight leash things with the turnovers, just like with Bo Levi Mitchell, with everybody else on that offense.
Luke, what do you think of Jordan Bird after the first touch?
Yeah, I think he bounced back. Take that play out. If you only tuned in the second quarter of that second quarter and on, I think you'd say, okay, well, you know what, not too bad here, and one explosive return, and even with that penalty that brought that return back, they still were able to, that infraction happened well up the play, so it was kind of still impactful. And I was thinking, like pretty decent. And Mike, to your point, it's like an NFL, or excuse me, it's a CFL savviness kind of thing about splitting defenders, knowing when the return's dead, understanding the halo and taking advantage of it and using it and setting up your returns, and knowing which ones you can kind of dance around on or want to lose ground, and knowing when you don't want to do that, which is most of the time. Most returns you should not give up any ground, and you should take what's kind of given to you. And I'm kind of excited to see more from Bird. I think he's the choice going forward.
I keep track of quarter statistics just to see if there's any trends, and this year's been really confusing. It's been bad starts for the Tiger Cats. They've been outscored 84-24 in the first quarter. They've gone 4 games without scoring any points in the first quarter. Then the second quarter is not too bad. Third quarter, they've been absolutely dominant. 4 touchdowns in their last 2 games. In their last 3 games, they've outscored opponents 33-3 in the third quarter. And then the fourth quarter, they allow the most points and haven't won a fourth quarter in 8 games. So you can't say after a break they don't start well, because, well, quarter 1 isn't good, but quarter 3 is. And then they finish strong in the first half, but can't finish late in the game. Is there any trend here that you guys can pick out, with quarter 1 and quarter 4 not being great, but the middle quarters are pretty good?
I think quarter 1 and quarter 4 are problem areas for different reasons for the team, but there is a trend. I mean, that's more than coincidental, right? I mean, we're past halfway through in the season, so these oddities that you track, RJ, are becoming statistically significant at this point, because we have enough sample size here, and it's been true all year. The first quarter, we've seen a lot of turnovers early in the season. We saw a lot of turnovers in the first quarter from the Ticats. That leads to a lot of those bad starts for sure. But in this Winnipeg game this past weekend, that's not one that wasn't the reason for that. They were getting stalled out on drives. It was one of those games where it felt like they hadn't even had any chances, and we were already into the second quarter. And it's just the way that the game went. And luckily, you had a defense that was holding the Blue Bombers to field goals. But that slow start, I think, is that's sort of a fixable preparation, maybe a play call thing. I would be focusing on that as a coaching staff, which surely Scott Milanovich's staff is. But I think that's the fixable problem. The fourth quarter is a little bit more, cuts to the core a little bit more to not finishing games. There's something about that losing energy that Mike talked about earlier in this episode. There's something about a habit of losing and a habit of winning, and those good teams, sometimes it looks like they luck into the wins in the fourth quarter, and maybe that does happen sometimes, but it's almost like, you feel an inevitability that you're going to win when you're a winning team, and you end up making it happen. I remember just really focusing on when I was struggling personally as a player, making plays or feeling productive or feeling like I was, doing well at my job. Or when the team was struggling, I remember just focusing on, I have to have fun out there. Got to smile, have fun, and be excited to possibly be the guy that wins the game for this team. And sometimes you end up being that person. But you can't have that slippery feeling like, oh no, here we go again. And each person's got to battle through that. So the fourth quarter is a tricky one. You've got to be able to finish well. If you wanted to talk sort of schematically. I always start to feel real uncomfortable when you can tell a team with the lead starts to play real sort of conservatively, running the ball more than they had earlier in the game, playing a real deep or sort of a shell defense just to not get beat over the top. So I would kind of appreciate or admire sort of an aggressive play call even when you have the lead, but it comes down to players making plays either way.
Well, and Luke, it's one of those things too where it is a momentum thing for this team, and you always hear good teams find ways to win. We just talked about it, and I think the Ticats are in that situation right now where they're almost expecting to lose, right? And players feel that a little bit on the sideline where it's like, hey, we're in the fourth quarter. It's a close game. We've seen this story this year. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is we usually end up in the L column after a situation like this. And the teams that are able to pull those wins out have the confidence. And like you said, are having fun, are enjoying it, and almost don't even realize that the fourth quarter is going on. It's just, okay, next play. Okay, oh, yep, next play. And this is my job here. And they just like, yeah, it'll work out. So it is a momentum thing. It's a confidence thing. It's a momentum thing. And it does go through the team, and it does really take effect. And I agree with you, Luke, in that first quarter is all about getting comfortable. Like, even so, I coach outside of this, and the biggest thing that I see is when a team is struggling, when something's going on, it's usually an over game plan situation where you just need to settle the players in, do what is comfortable for them. It's your base stuff, right? Everybody's seen it on film and prepped it already. But the players feel the most comfortable in that. And that's what will end up getting you down the field or getting you some stops. And you look at Chris Jones, and I think he played like 3 different coverages. And those players were flying around because they're like, hey, this is comfortable. I know how to do this. I know my job inside and out. And I do believe that was a big change in that defense. It was because it was so simple. It was so comfortable for these guys. They've played it thousands of times. And it's okay. Let's settle in and just be football players.
Okay, we're going to talk more about Chris Jones and the defense, but Mike, you mentioned your coaching. Let everybody know where you coach.
So I coach over at Laurier.
Or are you not allowed to?
No, I'm allowed. Absolutely, yeah. I coach at Laurier University. So, yeah, that's we had that this last week actually, where it was people's heads were spinning, and it's, hey, let's settle everyone down and call what we're used to.
Well, those young men are in good hands with you coaching them, Mike. How's the team doing?
Won our first game this week against my alma mater, McMaster. So Yeah, that was a good one.
Extra sweet.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Nice.
Undefeated season is still there.
There it is, right?
Still possible.
Yep, there it is.
That's
Great to have you with us.
Mike's on the fast track to whatever he wants to do in coaching. If you choose the lifestyle, Mike, it's you and I have talked about it so many times. It's not the easiest thing to be a CFL coach, but Mike, certainly you'd be a good one.
The defense was good. 3 takeaways. First time that many takeaways. Do you think Chris Jones had that much of an effect with 3 days of practice going into that game, Luke?
Maybe. I mean, I feel like we've heard Mike, we've heard Hitch when he's been on our Ticats this week. That the mentality of takeaways. Maybe it's something that you can kind of just really decide to turn on and then commit to it and get that much better at it. That's sort of the individual side of things, and then schematically, I don't know. I would say almost maybe probably not that the scheme or a defensive play call led to interceptions. I sort of more so put it on each player taking advantage of a bad throw from, in this case, Caleros, or just being ready to make that play. Of course, you get the lucky one as well that sort of bounced off in the air, but. You say lucky, but it was a fighting for a pass breakup, and not with a hand coming down to bat the ball down, but a hand coming in there that is going to be more likely to be lucky. So call it luck or call it just opportunistic and well done by the Ticats there. So maybe we'll continue to see more, and I almost put it just more so on players buying in and committing to that to forcing mistakes from their opponent.
And Coach Daly, you played defense in the CFL. What you talked about the limited coverages making. You think that made a big difference for the players, keeping it simple?
Yeah, for sure. And we talked about it last week on this show where Mark Washington versus Chris Jones is 2 completely different defensive game plans, and I didn't really see the Ticats do a whole bunch of variety of stuff. They were bringing in 3 down linemen a lot and just letting those 3 go crazy and try to get to Zach, knowing that he wasn't going to run around. But that allowed for a lot more coverage in the back end and not giving Zach a ton of openings to throw the ball. And you could see it. You could feel it. Zach was feeling the pressure, and he had to move a little bit and extend some plays. And, it's very simple. When the defensive play calling is simple, it allows you to play fast. Now, coaching is so good in the CFL that they can start scheming against stuff like that. But there's also another thing, and we talked about this with Dennis McKnight when he came in, where you almost get a rejuvenation of effort and trying to make a name for yourself for the new coach that's in, right? And it's hard to say exactly how that happens, but I do believe players are like, hey, I'm fighting for my job again, right? I need to prove to myself all over again. So there is going to be that extra effort play that's out there. There is going to be trying to make sure you're doing things exactly correctly. And the way Chris Jones was saying in practice for that week is I need to make sure that I am on absolute 100% accuracy for everything that I do, or else, hey, who knows? Maybe he'll start bringing somebody else in and moving me out.
I want you to put your coach's hat on again for a moment, Mike Daly, for Ryan Baker, 5th-round pick in this past draft. He's a rookie out of UBC, had 8 tackles in the game, and he's been given an opportunity here. What have you thought of his play? How good can he be?
Yeah, it's for him to be doing that as first of all, a 5th-round pick. What that means is just, there wasn't anything crazy exceptional that they saw from him. He's probably a good football player, made a lot of plays in his university career, but nothing that really stood out on paper. Usually those higher picks are for some pretty freakishly athletic individuals. So, listen, the Ticats scouting department, Canadian side, Drew Alamang and his crew have always done a fantastic job at finding just good football players, right? Might not run the fastest, might not bench the most, all that kind of stuff, but they scout really well for football and the IQ, and you can look at that with Stavros Katsantonis, you can look at that with now Baker, and what that does, having Baker and a Canadian that can play that linebacker position, that provides so much ratio flexibility. So now if the offense wants to go with another American receiver, right, or they want to dress 2 American running backs that might be coming up, that'll be a big one where it's just a situation where he'll be able to help put Kyle Wilson on the field and DQ Thomas on the field because he can play in the middle. There's a ton of flexibility there, and sky's the limit for the guy, especially getting a lot of experience early on.
Luke, want to ask you about Tim White. We've been waiting for this game from Tim White, 134 yards receiving, 31 yards rushing, and he seemed to have that bounce in his step and that confidence that we've seen from him in the past. What was your evaluation of Tim in that game?
Well, the play calls seem to be coming to him, and so part of it is he stood up for it when it was his turn. Interestingly, we heard Scott Milanovich after the game sort of mention, when a guy gets going, just to continue to feed him and to continue to go back to him. I always liked that as a player too. Like, when they kind of feed into a rhythm. It's just like we were talking about the team getting into sort of a rhythm of winning or in a habit where it kind of just happens. The same thing can happen in a drive or in a game where the ball just keeps coming to you and you just keep on making your plays. And that kind of happened to Tim White for sure. There was a contested ball in there that I can remember that you definitely want your receivers to rip away from the defender there, and it was very tight. And the call actually went to the Ticats, which was great. But overall, Tim was making plays and making catches. And I think you got to hope that that's how the season's going to continue for him. And he's surrounded by guys who, Shamar Bridges has been making plays all season when it's been his turn. Kind of quiet from Stephen Dunbar Jr. in this past week, but we've seen a lot from him too, and Keandre Smith as well. So that group has improved since the start of this year. I think there was the main problem there was drops in the beginning of the year, and you can remember all the conversations we had on this show in those early weeks of the season, and that's gotten a lot better. So it's a room that's improving for sure. And it's like we're 12 games into it, or 11 games into it now, right? And as there's only 18 to play, but it's like you're on a kind of a trajectory of better performance, quarterback to wide receiver, but the adversity's been mixed in there as well with the quarterbacks. So we'll see Tim White in his room, though. Certainly not. As you think back to that last game, certainly not the problem. Like oftentimes it was in the early parts of the season.
Mike, I know in the pregame show you do your CarStar Keys to Victory, and turnover battle is in there, and Tiger Cats won that. They had 3 takeaways, and Winnipeg just had 1. But it's been that kind of season for the Ticats. They get 2 field goals off their 3 takeaways, and Winnipeg's 1. They get a touchdown. So even though the Tiger Cats won the turnover battle, the Bombers end up with more points off of turnovers. It seems every mistake ends up costing the Ticats. Even when they do good things, they get outscored.
Yeah, and the turnover battle is a huge statistic on if you're going to win the game or not. But like you said, RJ, you also have to score some touchdowns and not be settling for field goals, which the Ticats defense made Winnipeg do. But Luke has said this multiple times, and I really like the saying because it fits really well, but not all turnovers are created equal. And we'll keep going back to it, but that punt return touchdown, that was a turnover that, and we talked about it on the broadcast too, it was turning. You could feel the Ticats momentum turning before the half. So now all of a sudden that second quarter becomes a little bit better. It's not as close of a game, or it's a closer game, should I say, going into that halftime. And so that one turnover was extremely costly because it was a touchdown. But yeah, it's a head scratcher where the defense can go into the meeting room and say, hey, what else do we have to do other than stop that last drive, right? It's, we give up 1 touchdown and what's going on. And when it's a tight game like that, Coach O, actually, one of his other sayings, and I really liked it, was you're playing their defense. So if their defense is able to hold their offense to no touchdowns or to be punting the ball, then we have to make their offense punt the ball and not get field goals. And yeah, it was frustrating that you get a turnover battle finally because we've been talking about it time and time again, and he come up with the L on that one.
Yeah, so the other odd thing in that game, Tiger Cats end up losing by 3, and Mark Leggio has a missed field goal, but his former team, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, probably was fired up. He hits a 50-yarder in the game for his season high. He misses from 45 yards, and literally 2.5 minutes later, he has that exact same kick, and he makes it. And Mark Leggio has been so good for the Tiger Cats this season. It's just a bad luck thing, and again, a mistake winds up haunting the Tiger Cats. And you said it, Luke, there's teams that find a way to win, and Montreal this past week was one of them. They were outscored 17-6 in the first half by Edmonton, and then they pitch a shutout in the second half, end up winning the game, but Edmonton had 2 passes to the end zone that went through receivers' hands. Now, there was traffic, but I've talked to you enough, Luke. If it goes through your hands, you probably should have caught it. That happened twice, and Edmonton would have won the game. But Montreal, we saw it when Hamilton played the Alouettes too. Just Tiger Cats are creeping back into the game, and Alouettes, they bend a little, and then they just put the game out of touch. Now, that's a team, obviously Grey Cup champs and leading the league, but they find a way. Again, if we knew the secret, we'd all be rich. We wouldn't be doing Ticats this week, would we? Maybe we would.
We'd be doing it. Yeah,
it's
sure.
Fun. Yeah.
Are you kidding? It's so tough, and at some point you gotta just have such a it's a tenacity at the end of the game for the Ticats. I really think so. I can think of the biggest catches I made in fourth quarters, and I can think of games that went wrong in the fourth quarter for me too. And I just, it's like you just got to be so excited, not to just like run out the clock and like hope that the score still stands. Like, I can think of examples of all these things, but I really like saying, man, the time it's right now. We can go make the play, and it might be me, and then it happens in some bizarre way, but you've got to be ready for that. And the coaches have got to think the same. They've got to call plays expecting the guys to be ready to do it. That's those drops by Edmonton, in the end zone against the best team in the league. And Edmonton is struggling themselves, of course. And, it's habits. It's habits, and it brings up, it's like PTSD from the early drops of the Ticat season this year.
Why do I get the feeling that if Edmonton was playing the Ticats, they wouldn't have dropped those passes? It's just...
That's a hard question, or a cutting question, because on the worst teams I was ever a part of, when as an offensive player and you're standing on the sidelines and it's second and long, and there was just some feeling like, man, it just feels like they're going to get it, and they get the first down, and it's a really raw thing to talk about as an athlete, because everyone wants to go in the meetings and say, no, like, I believe we can do it, and I believe we're better than this team. But there's like an inevitability to good teams and inevitability to bad teams, and you gotta force yourself to think highly of your own ability and your team.
Labor Day Classic, exciting. It's I don't love the saying that the season starts after Labor Day, but I think I think we're going to go with it this year.
We proved that saying wrong.
Seriously.
Now nobody can say that anymore. The season started earlier this year. Sorry.
Well, hang on. Tiger Cats are working their way back into the playoffs. Labor Day is, it starts after Labor Day this year.
RJ's Mr. Must Wins back in July, and every game is a must win. But I like your optimism. So now you're saying the season starts at Labor Day, and that's so let's hear it out.
Yeah, you got to change your philosophy to,
to
get the storyline you actually.
That's not working. Abandon it. It's fine.
Well, you guys both experienced Labor Day Classics at Tim Hortons Field, Ticats, Argos. It is a must-win, no matter what the standings are. David Butko, the producer of this show, he said it. Him and I were chatting. He said it doesn't matter if you're 10-0, it's still a must-win when you play the Argos on Labor Day. Shout out to David Butko. But your memories, guys. Mike, Labor Day Classic, Tim Hortons Field. what comes to mind for you?
Yeah, that's my favorite regular season game at Tim Hortons Field. Every single season, it's been my favorite, and that's just because the hype that does surround it. Tiger Town loves playing the Argos and being able to win on Labor Day because it just means so much to the blue collar, people of Hamilton. And it's, when you think Labor Day, it's funny. It's you always see the video compilations of the steel workers and the lunch pails and stuff like that. But when you go out and do these community events and you're out there with Tiger Town, like, that's exactly what it is in Hamilton. And those are the people that love coming to the Ticats games. And now it's, they remember when they were a kid going on Labor Day, and they always talk about Labor Day. Now they're bringing their kids to Labor Day games. And there's just the buzz around the city is super exciting. It's surrounded by the long weekend, obviously. So, everybody's happy that they get a day off of work, especially if you're working down by the steel mills, right? Like, you're like, hey, I got to go watch football and not work today. So everyone's super excited. But they were my favorite regular season games. It's very, eerily similar to having a playoff game at Tim Hortons Field from what I can remember. And I had so much fun in those because every play you make is amplified. Every play that their offense or their defense doesn't make is amplified. And the momentum, you can feel the shifts throughout the game, and it's a lot of fun.
I'm guessing when the Ticats do well, there's a few fans who need the Tuesday off, too. So enjoy yourself.
Yeah, you hope they already booked it off at this point, too, right? Knowing what's going to go on.
It is an afternoon game, but a Ticats win against the Argos on Labor Day would have to be celebrated. Luke, your Labor Day classic memories.
Well, is it okay if I talk about 2017 again? Because
yeah.
I always think about the Labor Day Classic, and interestingly, we've had a lot of delays this year, injuries in this season's case. But that Labor Day Classic in 2017, we had a 45-minute or so lightning delay right at halftime, and that was the first win we got that season to start turning things around. We did miss the playoffs, but after going 0-8, we started to change our tune a little bit, and maybe the same thing can happen for this team. And the Argos, when they came into Tim Hortons Field earlier this year, that was one of the Ticats' better performances and a very surprising performance for the league at that time in the season. The Argos are. The whole East is playing very well, but the Argos are third. Ottawa and Montreal do have a lead above Toronto, and so I think this is actually a big opportunity here. And if you want some early keys to the game, I'm excited to hear Mike's 3 keys to the game when it's game day. But Bo Levi Mitchell. I think that it's coming down to the Ticats quarterbacks have to have both ball security and big plays. Like, we just may need great quarterback performances to win with this Ticat team, and then we've got to finish well. We've been at times great at quarterback and at times inconsistent, and we have not finished games well. Even some of the games the games we won, we didn't necessarily finish well. So. That's where it starts for me, but I think this is a good opportunity for the Ticats.
First win came against the Argos, as you mentioned, Luke. That was on July 20th. It's the only game this season the Tiger Cats have led. They did not trail once in that game, and Chad Kelly's back. He's got a game under his belt, which, that could be not great for timing for the Tiger Cats. We'll have to see how he does, but the Tiger Cats need not only a victory to get them into the postseason, but if they win this game, they win the season series against the Argos, and if they can start putting things together, you never know, and you end up tying the Argos, you got that season series. So, Mike, can the Tiger Cats beat the Argos again?
Yeah, absolutely. I think any team can beat anyone, and you saw with the Edmonton and Montreal game that we mentioned, if you play good football, and Luke, we've seen that from the offense where the quarterback play can be elite. And if the Ticats play good football, especially with what we saw from the defense in Winnipeg, there's a great opportunity to beat this Argos team. I mean, their offense looked like it was sputtering along on the last game with Chad Kelly coming back. So I believe that they have a great opportunity in front of them. I think this defense is going to be rejuvenated. It's going to be able to help out this offense. But I agree with you, Luke. It's hard because I said this before. There's a situation where you get so nervous about turning the ball over that you don't try to make those big plays. And Bo doesn't really have an issue with that, but there's a lot of people, and I'm curious with the Jordan Bird situation too, that he is going to be a lot more thought worthy of holding onto that ball and making sure that he doesn't drop it. Maybe he misses a hole, and you really hope that doesn't happen for those big playmakers. But yeah, with this Argos team right now, there's a good opportunity, and the Ticats, they need to pick it up on offense. Bo needs to have a really good game, and I'm curious to see what happens with this running back situation as the week unfolds, right? Because they are going to have to lean on that as well. But I do like the trend and the direction that this defense is going in, and if Chad Kelly isn't able to be up to snuff for what he was before from us remembering, there's a great opportunity for this offense.
Let's talk about the running back situation. You let us in perfectly, Mike. Greg Bell, a really good game. Not too bad last game. James Butler, 1 game injured list. We don't know. There's still a long time until Monday. It feels like almost a bye week after playing Friday, and then you don't play again until Monday. But it's not officially a bye, so maybe James Butler's ready to go. How do you see this playing out, Luke, in the backfield for the Ticats?
It's been a bit of an issue. This is a offensive line that has protected the quarterback very well, best in the league, you could say. In some categories, including sacks allowed, is the Ticats' offensive line, but the run game has not been productive in a lot of games this year. It's very hard. Mike, you talked earlier about as a defensive mindset, saying we're competing against the opposing team's defense? Are we playing defense better than they're playing defense? If you look at this past Winnipeg game in the run games and the Ticats' ability to run the ball compared to Winnipeg, it wasn't even close. Brady Oliveira was unbelievably productive on the ground for Winnipeg. Huge gains on first downs on the drives that they were able to keep it together. It was because of Oliveira, where their passing game was not successful. The Winnipeg's, that is. So the Ticats, they have not been winning the run game battle very frequently. Some of the biggest games for running backs have been catches that they've made out of the backfield, receiving yards to running backs, and so. The fix for that is, to be honest, beyond me in technical sense. It's the run blocking and the ability for the timing of the running back to hit those gaps. It's not there right now. And if I'm Scott Milanovic, I probably have a short leash on who I want, leading the running game for the team. That is if and when James Butler gets healthy.
Playing the Argos, that first game, special teams was huge. Mike, you talked about Jordan Bird would need a big game. While Toronto's return game with Janarian Grant, he took a touchdown back. Tiger Cats had a blocked punt by Ante Milanovic-Litre. Do you see special teams being a big factor on Monday?
Yeah, absolutely. And like we said, with the Argos offense struggling, the biggest spark you can have is from a big return. And, get the feeling back. Because if you get a big return, even if you don't score, you put the offense on a short field, right? And then that's confidence building, because now even if they drive down and kick a field goal, it's, hey, we're putting up points, we're getting down there, right? It's confidence building. So when a team is struggling on offense, like the Argos did that last game with Chad Kelly, you need to keep the confidence low for them, and you can't give any of those big returns up. So this is a huge opportunity for the Ticats special teams to limit Janarian Grant, because everybody that's watched any of the Argos games knows that he's their true game breaker on that team, and he has done a lot of good things even when the Argos have been struggling. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do. Nick Constantino has been punting really, really well, a bright spot of the Ticats. He's able to bounce that thing around, keep the returners guessing where it might go. But Janarian Grant is a game breaker, so if this Ticats offense and defense wants to do well, they better be putting the Argos in long field positions, and that's keeping it away from that guy.
Guys, I can see it now. Hamilton Tiger Cats, West Division champions. How does that sound?
For the first ever crossover east to west, that would be an exciting little stretch for us, RJ. That'd be fun to watch and fun to call.
It would, and maybe it's the best route at this point to get to the Grey Cup, but the Argos in third place in the East Division would be leading the West Division. So are we at that point where we got to think crossover, Luke?
Why don't we check in next week after Labor Day and see what happens? Because,
Good point.
Or
do you want to wait till game 18 and we'll
there we
we'll
go. That's when I would
that.
like to. That's when I would like to talk about that. My guess would be that it is the most likely possibility. It just seems like it seems like a long shot. There's a lot of teams over there, and they've all got games to play too, and things to polish off. And Winnipeg, is one of the two teams that you'd like to have a chance to catch in the West, and they just snuck away with a win there. So really, really hard. But the East, it's an incredible looking standings in the CFL this year, and it looks very different from when I always played. When you had a strong West. But this is very different. The Ticats are chasing a few giants here in the East, and maybe that will be their best pathway.
I joke with you, Luke, but you're right. This game on Monday, the Labor Day Classic, is massive. If the Tiger Cats can get that victory, it puts them back in East Division contention. Are you thinking at all about the crossover, Mike, or are we a little early yet?
I'll take the Luke route as opposed to the RJ route on this one, but I think it's just because as a player you always get into this world where you're like, okay, listen, we just need to start getting things going the right way, and that's one play at a time, one quarter at a time, one game at a time. This is the ultimate cliche, but it's got to be what's being said internally. It's, hey, let's just start putting. Let's string good plays together, good quarters together, and just see where we end up, right? See where the cards are going to land. But right now, there's too many, red flags with the Ticats and that roller coaster of playing well and then, having these lulls that it's one of these, hey, let's just start trying to get a full game together where we're like, hey, you know what? All three phases did really, really well. Then if that means that we have to go west to the playoffs, perfect. Let's do it, right? But we definitely have to start playing well before we can start going into any playoff games, because you don't want to get out to one of those and then just get handed a loss. So that's not fun. But yeah, it was one play at a time. I will take Luke's route here, where I'd like to talk about it at the end of the season to see, because then I know I'm right. Then I don't have to guess. I don't have to anticipate. I know I'll be right.
That's right. We all want to be right. And one thing that we just have to address before we leave, and it's back to Chris Jones. We saw what he did after 3 days of practice, the 3 takeaways. I'm excited to see, after basically 10 days working with this defense, if we see a huge difference. He could really, not that he needs to solidify his reputation as a defensive guru, but if they come up with a great game against the Argos, bunch of takeaways, they're the story of the game, I think Chris Jones can put that defensive crown on his head. You played a lot of defense, Mike. Are you looking forward to that?
Yeah, I am, and
to see what changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious to see what else an extra week of Chris Jones will do, and what that'll look as the new Ticats defense. But you have to remember at this point too, and the playoffs are still in reach, but a lot of players are sitting there thinking, I got to play for my job. I got to play for, my career down the line. And guess what? The coaches are thinking that exact same thing too. And so there's going to be this energy to try to get everything back on track. So I'm curious to see how Chris Jones does. I'm more curious to see the energy that the guys are going to play with, because that's super telling on if they enjoy their time at practice, if they're enjoying their time with the team, is just the effort and energy level. And I thought that was really high by the Ticats in that Winnipeg game, although there's some things that didn't go well, especially that last drive. But you can really tell by just watching a game if they're having fun, if they're enjoying it. And I did see that from the Ticats defense out last game.
Luke, just finally here, do you think having the 10 days off is a good thing for the Tiger Cats going into the Labor Day Classic?
Yeah, I think it is. I think the longer the week, the better. And you're also going to sneak an extra prep day in there for the coaches, but everyone can catch their breath and enjoy sort of a longer build up and more film study. I think it. I don't overthink that one. I think it is what it looks like, and it's better to have a couple more days of rest there.
Well, this is it. We've been waiting for it. The schedule comes out. We all circled the Labor Day Classic. The Argonauts visiting the Tiger Cats, Tim Hortons Field. If you can be there, be there. The fans that go all the time, they know how exciting the Labor Day Classic is. There's so many events around Tim Hortons Field. There's basically going to be concerts, tons of musical guests. It's one of those games that, game 12 of the season, but it feels like the playoffs. So it is a 2:30 kickoff. Please be at Tim Hortons Field if you can. It's going to be an exciting game. Tiger Cats need the support. They need the win. They could win the season series against the Argos if they win the game on Monday. Labor Day, 2:30 is the kickoff. Mike Daly and Bubba O'Neill will have the pregame show at 1:30 on the Ticats Audio Network, ticats.ca/listen, and Luke and me will have the call kickoff at 2:30. Thanks, everybody, including Mike Daly, Luke Tasker. I'm RJ Broadhead. Always appreciate when you listen and watch Ticats This Week.
This has been the Ticats This Week, built by Turkstra. Whatever your next home project is, build it better with Turkstra. Visit TurkstraLumber.com today. Like and follow the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast content, and get a deeper understanding of your Hamilton Tiger Cats.